This rain also coming as many of you are getting ready to head to the polls on Election Day. Does weather affect the turnout? Breaking it down for us today is Houston Chronicle meteorologist Justin Ballard. Justin, welcome back to the program.
Thank you on this kind of muggy, wet Monday.
It doesn't feel like it's the first week of November, does it? I mean, it's just been ridiculous how mild it has been. Now, the Chronicle team has done a couple of stories on this very topic. What did you find about how different types of weather tend to affect turnout across the country?
So a couple of things that I noticed. First of all, voter turnout does get affected negatively when we're talking about heavy rain, especially on Election Day.
Okay.
There's a caveat. We'll get to that caveat in just a second, but you see obviously long lines, a very familiar sight, especially with this election over the last couple of weeks, with early voting in Texas ending last Friday. So hopefully we had a good stretch of decent, at least dry weather, during early voting. So hopefully people were able to take advantage of that while we did have early voting in place.
So you said rain can slow things down. How about temperatures? Higher temperatures, lower temperatures, how does that impact the turnout?
So researchers actually found that for every I believe it's 10 degrees above average temperatures climb, you see more and more turnout. So the higher the temperatures are, the more turnout is as well.
That is fascinating. So I guess that makes sense in the northern part of the country because we're just always somewhat warm around here. But
especially this time of the year. You see the stats there. So for every 1 inch above normal rainfall, so forgive me, I don't know off the top of my head what the exact daily amount of rainfall is in Houston, but for every 1 inch above that, turnout drops by about 1%, according to this 2017 Dartmouth study. And for every 1.8 degrees, the temperature increases, voter turnout increases by just about as much of a percentage point, 1.4.
Now, what are the differences like between a presidential election year and then, say, midterms are an off year?
That's a great question. And believe it or not, research doesn't really show much of a difference in terms of voter turnout during these high-stakes elections. That may not come as much as a shock to really anyone. Voter turnout is high regardless of those elections, no matter the weather. It's those smaller, quote-unquote smaller, because all elections matter, but those slightly smaller elections where voter turnout is increased or decreased because of the weather.
So there tends to be higher voter motivation to ignore the weather on presidential elections.
Exactly.
Okay. Does bad weather give advantage to one party over the other?
It does.
Really?
Now, there's a caveat because, of course, now a lot of states have early voting, mail-in ballots, things like that. So the effect is not quite as intense as maybe it once was, but especially the Republican Party, believe it or not, is kind of gets a little bit of a bolster when the weather is maybe not so great.
Interesting. All right. So
rainy.
The polls locally open 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. tomorrow. Given the rain that's coming, what would be the best time to get out there? And not only let's talk about locally, let's also look across the entire country to see what weather may do.
Yeah, because there's 7 battleground states. We've got to get to all of that. But of course, locally, I think the best time, if you haven't, of course, done so already, I know I have, maybe towards the evening hours is kind of what we're looking at. Future radar hinting at where those storms will be earlier in the day. I think the best chance of any kind of strong storms will really be before polls open at 7 a.m.
Yeah, hopefully so. The timing works out for us. And then it's just a matter of, are there any roadways that are clogged with water and, just kind of driving around. But hopefully folks aren't having to stand out in any bad weather. But I would prepare to at least have an umbrella on hand. Now we're going to actually look at weather across the entire country with Future Track because, of course, it's a national election here. It's not just what's happening here locally. So let's go back to our Future Track and show you what's happening elsewhere across the country. Justin, it looks like that same weather system that's impacting us will send rain all the way up towards the Great Lakes.
Yeah, rain. Obviously as far north as Minnesota, Wisconsin, as well into Michigan. Wisconsin and Michigan, of course, battleground states. And you see the heavy rain possible there. So this is a pretty wide-reaching sort of system. And you see we're kind of honing in on those battleground states.
Right.
Wisconsin, Michigan, even parts of North Carolina and Georgia, seeing some showers likely for Election Day.
Looks like great weather, though, in Pennsylvania and most of Georgia. And then out on the West Coast, not too bad for
Aside
Phoenix.
From a couple flurries, some snow showers there in northeastern Nevada.
Maybe some strong winds there as well. So
Yeah,
overall,
that too, of course.
So it looks like it may not have a huge influence on turnout, especially given that it is a presidential election.
Correct. Especially since so many of these states have early voting as well.
Yeah. Okay, Justin Ballard, thanks so much for breaking it down for us and bringing that study to light. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
All right.